Good evening, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Cambodia Global Dialogue of Southeast Asia TV. Tonight, I have a pleasure to have a good friend. We knew each other for nearly 2 decades, if I can say, since the day I was with the Ministry of Commerce. And it's a good day because we're going to be talking about something quite historical. We're going to talk about the relationship between Cambodia and the Asian Development Bank, because this year we are celebrating our 50th anniversary, and I couldn't have a better person to come to have a nice chat with me, to share, a bit of the history and what's happening in Cambodia today, and also a bit about the future on how the Asian Development Bank, as our strategic partner, has helped develop our country. So, welcome, Sam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Siphana, for having me on your program.
Yes, I think since this is the first time you are on my show, I'm going to ask you to maybe share a bit with the audience, a bit about yourself, your background before you come to Cambodia, and a bit about yourself.
Thank you. Prior to joining the Asian Development Bank in October 2000, I used to work for the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank of the Kingdom of Tonga,
Yes.
where I come from. I also had the opportunity to work for the private sector in a commercial bank
Yes.
and the Pricewaterhouse
Okay.
before Cooper's Life Brand was added.
All the big boys.
And so my professional background is very much on banking, finance, a bit on macroeconomic policy analysis and formulation, and I'm also a chartered accountant.
Oh,
Since joining ADB in 2000, that's 16 years ago.
yeah, 16 years. I remember that's
16
when you
years
came to
ago.
Cambodia. I was with Ministry of Commerce, and that's how we first met.
And I just met you towards the end of
Yeah.
your time
Yeah.
with the ministry. I have been working on projects in India,
Yeah.
Maldives. For the last 14 years, I've been focusing very much on Southeast Asia, in Indonesia, Myanmar, Vietnam, Brunei, Laos, BDR, and of course Cambodia. I have been visiting Cambodia since 2004 as the team leader for the financial sector
Yes,
development
yes,
program.
yes.
And that lasted until 2012. And then February of this year, I started on my new role as country director.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you. And I look forward to working closely with the Royal Government of Cambodia
Yes.
to further strengthen our partnership and support the development agenda of the country.
Well, before we talk about ADB a bit, you refresh some good memory of the day when you were helping Cambodia, getting the blueprint for the financial sector. Do you know that at that time we were negotiating accession to the WTO? And of course, in the WTO is all about liberalizing the sector that the partner has pushed very hard is on the financial sector, banking sector. And our argument at that time, why we did not open everything right away, was that, look, we are working with ADB to have this financial blueprint, right? So everything is a timing issue. It's not that we don't want to open up, but we want to do gradually and based according to our own development plan. So I think that's why I remember so well, because that was a saving grace when we tell some of our partners to say, look, because they were pushing us very hard, and it's all about negotiation, Yeah.
But if you remember, the membership with the WTO provide the impetus for the reform.
Yes.
The government decided to go into the market
Yes.
oriented reform agenda.
Yes.
And the financial sector program came in
Yes.
and picked up on that. There were several legislation that the WTO wanted to put in place, and a couple of those were sponsored by this program over the years. If you remember the enterprise law, that was also approved as the equivalent of
Yes.
the corporation law.
Yeah.
It went on to the insolvency law.
Yes. Yes.
Then the
Secure transactions.
secure transactions,
Yes.
securities,
Yes.
of both government securities and the private sector
Yeah.
securities that resulted in the development of the Securities Exchange Commission and Securities Exchange here. So these were legislations
Yes.
that were necessary, not only because of the WTO, but they were necessary for the growth momentum and the development agenda that the government wanted to put in place back in the 2000s.
So I think we just on that small segment, we have made an imprint, a major imprint, because if you look, well, we fast forward from 12 years later, right, from the day we joined the WTO to today, you can see the thriving banking sector, microfinance, everything, all this happened because of a sound regulatory and legislative framework, you know.
But if you look back in when we started in 2001, the total credit to the private sector was just about 6% of GDP. Now this week the National Bank has reported that it's almost 80%. So that is the contribution of the financial sector to the GDP of the country. So looking back, the vision that the government had in terms of adopting the blueprint
Yeah.
and having all these reforms in place
Yeah.
to improve access to finance,
Yeah.
have competition to reduce the interest spread, and these are working. Because
Yeah.
I look back when the interest spread was more than 15%. It's coming lower. It's
Yes.
below 10% now.
Wow.
The interest spread between banks and microfinance.
Yeah, that's great. But you know, this year it's 50 years. You know, because I remember way back in '96 where ADB, you know, start to have your presence very strong. But it's interesting that our relationship date more than 20 years. It's 50 years, right? So Cambodia is a founding member of ADB.
Cambodia was one of the 31 founding members of ADB back in 1966. And it was a time when agriculture was the main economic activity.
Yes.
And several countries were going through a period of conflict before that. And although Cambodia went into an unfortunate situation back in 1975,
Yeah.
but then it picked up in the resumption of operation in the 1990s. And if I can just touch a little bit on that partnership, I think the nature of our partnership is very much based on the products and services that ADB provides.
Okay.
ADB provides loans,
Yes.
technical assistance, and grants, mostly to the government, but recently we have a private sector arm that is lending directly to the private sector. In some countries, they need a blanket guarantee from the government. But those are the products, and to supplement that, ADB also provides knowledge from the development results, as well as advisory support to the member countries. So since Cambodia became a founding member, basically Cambodia is a shareholder of ADB.
Yes.
And then Cambodia is also a client, borrowing country of the ADB.
Yeah.
So the relationship bid well for a partnership such as what we have been over the years. So how we plan and program and design projects, it's very much based on the priorities of the government.
Yes.
So when we do our plan, we normally have 5-year plans, just along the same timeline.
Is that the
country partnership strategy? We call that
CPS.
country partnership strategy. And we normally develop that in line with the strategy of the government.
Okay.
Now, Cambodia has the rectangular strategy.
Yes.
We have to align our partnership strategy to that.
Yes.
And the time-year implementation based on the social and economic development plan of the country. We also follow the same timeline.
Yes.
In 5 years. So that's our planning. But every year we do our programming,
Yeah.
and the programming refers to the identification of the projects
Okay.
to be financed by ADB. So it's normally a 3-year cycle, so we update it every year, and we do consultation with the private sector, civil societies, the public, and then we go back to the government and they will say these are our priority areas.
Okay.
So that's what we refer to as our partnership. And once that program, annual rolling plan is approved,
Yeah.
then the individual projects every year will be designed and processed for approval,
Yeah.
and then the implementation follows from that.
If you have a pie chart, right? What would be the biggest chunk, in terms of sector that ADB work with Cambodia?
As the latest, our total projects to Cambodia is around 2 billion. About 60% of that goes into infrastructure.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And infrastructure, we have been covering 5 areas.
Transport, right?
Agriculture, irrigation, and drainage and management of water. The second one is transport, but we focus very much on the rural roads.
Okay.
Rural roads, more to facilitate farmers going to
To the market.
and bringing their
Yes.
produce to the
Yeah.
market,
Yes.
and from the local market to the
Yes.
external market.
Yes.
So the transport rural roads are very important. Energy is another area that we have been supporting. Water. Access to clean water has been an area that we focus on, and it's increasing. And the last one is on sanitation.
Okay.
So those 5 infrastructure areas cover the infrastructure. We also provide support for education,
Yeah.
human capital.
Yeah,
Human
human
capital
capital,
is becoming a high priority here in Cambodia, and our focus is very much on the secondary level.
Okay.
Our previous programs have been supporting the lower secondary, and it's moving now to the upper secondary. And the government's priorities in recent years is for us to look at technical vocational training.
Part of this industrial development policy.
Yes, and that is necessary to create employment opportunities for the people of Cambodia, and particularly when you are looking at the age group here, they're about 60% in the 15 to 60. So this is the productivity age, and I think the agenda that the government has set in terms of improving the skills, improving education, is something that will go a long way in terms of moving forward in developing Cambodia.
So human development dimension, but more into skill.
More into skill. And we also cover some work on public financial management.
Okay.
So those are the cross-cutting areas.
The good governance side.
Good governance, and making sure that the line ministries are aligned with the budget of the government and they are implementing them properly. And then we are also moving from there to the subnational level.
Okay.
Decentralization. And that will have more inclusive impact on the development. So working on the public financial management side will also enable services to reach the poor and the near poor in terms of improving the revenue collection, as well as having the budget designed in such a way that will impact on the growing sectors of the economy. And financial sector is the other cross-cutting.
Sam, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I want to stress a bit more on what your last point, which is, what we're doing now, on the financial sector. We have the early days, but then we are now in phase 3, right? Phase 2 or 3, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
3, right? Okay, so we take a short break. Well, Sam, okay, let's continue on something that I know you have a passion for, because you're a banker by profession, right? I mean, let's talk a bit about, how we move 10, 15 years later in the financial blueprint. Where are we now? I mean, what stage of advancement are we already? Because, way back in the WTO day, it was the first one. We just start setting the stage, right? How advanced are we?
Well, it is a 10-year financial sector blueprint. We normally update it every 5 years.
Every 5 years, yeah.
So the intention is to review the progress and then really redesign it on a 10-year rolling. So we are now on I think it's more on the fourth stage.
Fourth stage, really.
Looking at the 2015 to 2025,
yes.
2016 to 2025
yes.
Period. But what has happened is more important. The initial stage was looking at rebuilding the
yes.
financial sector.
Yes.
Growing the banking sector, converting the NGO type of financial operations into microfinance, and building the microfinance sector, improving the regulatory regime at the National Bank of Cambodia and the Ministry of Economy and Finance on insurance. So the foundations were laid in the first 10 years. So now we are shifting into the next stage on improving the supporting infrastructure.
Okay.
The next stage that we move into was the infrastructure for securities.
Okay.
So in 2011, Cambodia launched the Securities Exchange Commission. There were other infrastructures like the Credit Information Bureau, which fully privatized.
Yes.
Secure transaction.
I sit on the board of that.
I see. Even the accounting, the accounting profession was also supported by this program. And interestingly enough, I've seen some of the graduates from the CAMET school here that has been the main training institute for accounting. So the other area was developing the national payment and settlement system that completed in around 2012.
Yes.
So that's the infrastructure to support rolling out the financial system to the rural area and the poor. And now they are looking at using telecommunications for
moving to fintech.
Fintech is coming in.
Yes.
Fintech is coming in, and it's going to probably leapfrog the access to finance.
Financial inclusion at its best.
That's where I'm moving to, because the stage we're in now, we have a program going to the board in November. It's focusing on financial inclusion. And these are the areas where we are trying to get the rural areas access to finance and to understand finance.
Financial literacy, all that thing is part of the inclusion.
That program covers financial literacy training and making sure that there is safety net to support the growth of financial access. And there is discussion of setting up a deposit insurance. Deposit financial insurance. I read in the paper yesterday that the National Bank is supporting the initiative, and it's going to move forward. So at this stage now, we are moving and rolling out the financial system to those who cannot access previously, and to train them to be able to understand how to make use of it, and to provide some safety mechanism in case there are faults or even people breaking into the system.
Well, I would say that I helped set up the Credit Bureau Cambodia, and now I sit as independent board. And you can see that these are the sort of support infrastructure of this financial ecosystem that enable banks, microfinance, to have confidence. Oh, now I can lend and my risk is lower because I can check the guy, right? And that's one thing, but I find the other thing that is quite, captivating is this, how, the banking sector, the financial sector is catching up with the technology. We were talking about the World Economic Forum. They mentioned this so-called fourth industrial revolution, right? It is a revolution. How can you imagine that somebody in the countryside, who have no clue what's happening in Phnom Penh now have access to finance using a smartphone, right? This sort of sort. So you basically are rolling out all these things. First 10 year, system in place.
First 10 year was reconstruction.
Yes, reconstruction.
Of course, a lot of the infrastructure were damaged and destroyed.
Yes.
So it was a reconstruction of the key institutions.
Yes.
Developing the human resource capacity, and then the second phase was moving into the supporting infrastructure, where the credit bureau came in, the national payment and settlement system to enable banks outside in the provinces to settle on a daily basis.
You see also the soon or a bit in the long term the development of pension. Like money reinvested here.
That has been an area. It has been an area that I've had the discussions within the government of looking seriously at this area. But it is a necessary ingredient of the financial sector development, because once we move from banking to securities and the debt market, then we need more investors in the long term, in the long run.
So that the money stays here.
So the money stays here. So pension fund, insurance, life insurance, these are necessary financial institutions to keep the longer term investment, because most of the banks are short term in nature. Deposits are short term, so they can't extend their assets beyond the liability timeline. So we are looking at financial sources to support longer-term investments, and that's where the private sector will start coming in to support the development agenda of the government through either the other intermediary, not only the bank, but the securities exchange and the debt market.
Yes. Well, you mentioned one good word, private sector. And this is something that I want to get back a bit into the partnership, because partnership with the government, partnership with other stakeholders is important. Let's talk a bit more. How do you see ADB and Cambodia as a country with so many different stakeholders? How do we look at this partnership, strategic partnership, I may say?
Yes. Since the resumption of operation back in 1992. The focus was very much on reconstruction. Reconstruction, rehabilitation, relief support. There were some elements from ADB's human support, particularly after the period of conflict and the major flood in 1991. And that flood had about 200 families dislocated. So they had to be resettled somewhere. And at the same time, there were people coming back from the border to be resettled. So this particular program that ADB provided in 1992 for rehabilitation helped in these areas. And that reopened the partnership again with a interim strategy that was approved in 1992 that covered the 92-95 period. But then the next 10 to 12 years were focusing very much on reconstruction and rebuilding. And there were 4 sectors that ADB focused on, based on Congress priority. It was agriculture, transport, energy, and education. And education was necessary as well. So since those first 10 to 12 years, the government has moved into the development momentum to support growth. So most of the policy dialogue and programs were focusing on policies that will encourage investment, policies that will encourage trade, policies that will encourage mobility of human resources, professional people across the border. And that's when the regional integration agenda came in. And through the Greater Mekong sub-regional program, that has really opened up.
I mean the GMS?
The GMS. The GMS has opened up the connectivity and created opportunities for more trade, more investment coming in, more tourism coming in, and we are beginning to see that. So now, since 2000 until today, the government has sort of set the foundation for a growth model, and it's beginning. It's showing signs that it's working, and we are seeing the continued economic growth today. So where we are at the moment, we are very, ADB is very much responding to the growth and development agenda of the government. At the same time, ADB in 2000 moved to identify poverty reduction as its main agenda, and it's in line with what the government.
I think we're doing quite well, no? In terms of poverty reduction, no?
I think
if you look back for the last 20 years,
Cambodia has done very well over the past 20 years, reducing the poverty level from around 50% to around 15%. That's based on the threshold of $1.25 a day. But I think there are still risks there. There are still risks there because
there's some disaster striking the family, they could fall back, right? So the vulnerability is still there.
There's a vulnerability there of about 70% of the population that are living on, say, $3 a day. And they are the vulnerable group for any natural disaster or any shocks from
health issue
or economic shocks emanating from outside of Cambodia. So that is an area that we watch closely, and we try and focus what we call our inclusive agenda to try and include them and bridge the gap.
So I think the way I see it is that you look holistically, where is the Cambodian government policy, you align and you provide the support in that respect. So in other words, it's a complementarity, of direction. And I would say that we just recently graduate into the low middle income country. So it's quite an achievement anyway, coming from a country that for so many years we always say, well, we're the least developed country, But I can look at so many different aspects, and I think that the infrastructure is probably the key determinant. The connectivity, now is the buzzword is connectivity, right? Regional integration matters. ASEAN Economic Community, we are in now. You mentioned quite a bit about the Greater Mekong region, the GMS. I think all this is basically the background that explains why Cambodia is doing quite well.
Yeah, I think as Cambodia started opening up, all these benefits are coming in. But I think we have enjoyed a very stable government here, a very dynamic team of leaders that have visions, and they have visions that have guided our partnership over these years, and we are beginning to see the fruits in terms of continued economic growth. Although our discussion has been very much on encouraging the government to start diversifying their economic
base.
And that's important.
Do you see diversification taking place now?
There is some element of diversification in the manufacturing industry that is moving from the lower products to upmarket products. Because previously they were determined by the market that was available, but that's in the manufacturing industry. I have visited one of the special economic zone and looked at some of the new industries that are coming in. There is potential coming out of this manufacturing industry. It's not so much on garment
Yes.
taste
Yeah.
and footwear, but Cambodia is moving into other
Yes.
industries.
Yes.
And I think the partnership now is looking more
Yes.
at upskilling
Yeah.
the labor force
Yes.
to start to match
Yes.
these demands.
Sam, I think we can take a break. When we come back, I want to continue deepening on this partnership, but more focus on partnership with the private sector. Sam, you know, infrastructure, when we talk about connectivity, one have to say something about finance. And we talk about finance, even though Cambodia is now graduating to the low middle income country, government resources are very limited. The need is enormous. Port, highway, railroad, you name it, right? This is where I see the other engine of growth is the private sector. What is your, sort of like strategy in dealing with that particular partnership, this so-called public-private sector partnership?
Thank you. It has been about 3 years since ADB started working with the government in developing a legal framework
Yes.
to support such a marriage. Because private sector and public sector, they need to be comfortable
Yes.
as partners. So the necessary ingredient is to have a legal
Yes.
and regulatory framework
Yes.
that will encourage,
Which is
the laws and
Yeah.
regulations to support it.
Yeah.
The government is also looking at setting up the institutions
Yes.
to support the development of private partnership.
Okay.
And then there has to be capacity building,
Yes.
because a lot of these projects will have to be designed, developed,
Yeah.
bid out, and then implement. So these are necessary steps that
Yes.
we are going through in terms of our work with the Ministry of Economy and Finance to develop the legal framework, the appropriate regulations,
Yeah.
set up the office within the Ministry of Economy and
Yes.
Finance, and the line ministries that will be doing public-private partnership projects, and then start training.
Yes. Yes.
Training
Yeah.
staff to be able to manage.
You see the traction from private sector?
There is interest.
Yeah.
There is interest, and I think the pressure with respect to the declining finance from the development
Yes.
sources, it is declining.
Which is normal, no? As you move up the
in your status
Yes.
as a middle income country, the availability of concessional
Yes.
finance will
It's dwindling,
decline,
yeah.
and then there will be pressure on the government to continue to raise
Yes.
finance. But then there are priority sectors
Yeah.
that the government will also look at. So getting the supplementary finance from the private sector is important, and it is getting urgent.
Yeah.
So the agenda that we are working on at the moment in our partnership is to develop the appropriate legal framework. I understand that the policy paper has been approved.
Okay.
So we're moving forward in looking at some of the necessary laws
Yes.
and regulations that will support this partnership to last and to remain sustainable.
Yeah, well, I think it's quite clear that the Greater Mekong Sub-region, the GMS, is really one of the growth center. I mean, ASEAN is 10 countries, but you have the island ASEAN, and then you have the subcontinental of the Mekong region, which is, I would say, a subset, but quite a dynamic because they are linked together, right? So the critical mass is there. And I can see now a strong interest from Japan. Prime Minister Abe, Foreign Minister Kishida is pushing the quality infrastructure, the commitment to develop more the border zone, the border economic zone, the economic corridor. And in Cambodia, we have now a lot of attention on the southernmost coastal corridor. We call it 4K, right? The Kampong from Thailand chart is Kokong,
Okay.
the first K, and then Kampong Sound, Sinuvir, right?
Okay.
And then you're down to Kampot, the third K, and the fourth one is Kep. And then it go all the way down to southern Vietnam. So that's the southernmost corridor. But that's where it linked to the port. So, and then you also have the very strong initiative of the Chinese, the One Belt One Road connectivity there. So I think I'm very confident that if we have, as you rightly say, if the government is putting, with your support, a strong legal framework, it will give the confidence for the private sector to come in to develop all this infrastructure.
Most certainly, and I think you mentioned the South Economic Corridor. That's the corridor, South Economic Corridor that runs from Poi Bet, Phnom Penh to Pabet.
Yes, yes.
And that has been one of the economic corridor under the GMS.
Yes. A successful one.
A successful one, and a successful one for Cambodia. So now we are moving into setting up economic zones within this corridor.
Yes.
And these economic zones are providing the necessary urban infrastructure.
Yes.
Because people are beginning to be attracted to this zone because tourism is flowing through.
Yes.
Trade is going through.
Yes.
Employment is there. And these are the opportunities that are opening up.
Yes.
And I think moving outside of Cambodia, there are work done to identify some of the missing links on railways. And there's also work here looking at the multimodal transport.
Yes, indeed. This is recognized in our industrial policy.
Exactly, because of the cost that it will bring.
Yes.
In the industrial policy, it looks very much in the initial phase trying to cut down the cost of doing business.
Yes.
And if you can identify a multimodal transport connection that is cheaper than just roads, then that's where we will be heading into the future. And even the connectivity with outside of
beyond Cambodia.
Beyond Cambodia.
Sam, I know time, we have 45 minutes, in fact we need 10 hours. But in the short time that we have, I cannot not discuss with you the issue of climate change, because it's the talk of the century now. What's happening in New York now, the UN is waiting for ratification. Last year, the COP21, the Paris Agreement was signed. It's exciting, but on the other hand, it's a lot of issue, a lot of challenge we need to tackle. I'm pretty sure ADB have a very strong component on climate change, adaptation, and things to help Cambodia. What's happening in Cambodia?
So far, most of our projects on infrastructure have to be built to a level of resilience.
Yes.
And that has always been our practice. But with the agreement that was reached last year in Paris, our management has announced around 6 billion for adaptation and mitigation going into 2020.
Yeah.
So ADB is committed to that. ADB is committed to improving the standard of design and the readiness of projects so that the projects are resilient and to be able to sustain beyond the completion of the project. But I think looking at the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals that captures environment and climate change, that captures health, education, children. So that particular framework is coming at the right time. And it's different from the Millennium Development Goal because the Sustainable Development Goal has to be nationalized.
Yes.
It has to be.
We do have now
At the moment, there is the process for adopting the Sustainable Development Goal has to go into the next social and economic development plan of the government. And I understand the midterm review is I think it's about to complete. And that will identify some of the targets and indicators.
And that's where you intervene.
And that's an area that we have policy dialogue, and it's not just ADB,
Yes.
but other development
Yes.
partners. We are having dialogue on what kind of indicators
Yes.
that will be used to measure these. And these are necessary because each country, once they nationalize the Sustainable Development Goal, they have to provide regular reports.
Yes. It's always the challenge of monitoring, right?
Yes. And then the good thing is this framework captures economic, environment, and it's quite wide, and it's running into 2030.
We're running out of time, Sam. I want to just close by asking you one last question. Since you mentioned about 2030, what is your perspective, your personal view, 2030 for Cambodia and ADB?
ADB is now working on its 2030 strategy.
Yes.
At the moment, we still have use our 2020 strategy. But I think the momentum that Cambodia has at the moment with its growth agenda and its connectivity with the region, I think it's doing quite well in terms of all the necessary policy conditions to support that. I think what is also going very well now is the emphasis on training and vocational training. And I've watched the reform done by the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports. It's heading in the right direction. It's like growing your economy. You have to educate your people.
Yes.
And the focus at the moment is going to take us to 2030. We will continue to do work on infrastructure, but infrastructure to ensure that the beneficiaries are able to have opportunities. So I would say the infrastructure area will continue. Education will become a priority in the long term. Our poverty reduction agenda is not completed, and I think we will continue to pursue that. And the inclusive access to growth is another challenge that is emerging, particularly when the gaps between the high level and the lower level is widening. So that is another dimension that we are coming in to try and address. And I think the last part is the trend whereby people are beginning to move from rural areas to urban areas. And that's a normal trend. But that's an area where we would do more work on urbanization to broaden the facilities, the existing facilities, water, sanitation, electricity, and that will continue to support the economic development of
Well, Sam, thank you so much. I think you wrap it up quite well, our discussion and give us a sort of good projection as to the strategic partnership between my country, Cambodia, and the Asian Development Bank. So I have nothing else to wrap up. You did the wrap up already. But again, I want to say thank you, Sam, for coming. And again, we should celebrate. This is our 50-year anniversary. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have. I'm not going to summarize, but I want to say that we had a very good 50 year, and we're looking forward for another 50 year to come. I will not be around by that time, but it's okay. Good night.